Það ekki nema vika í atkvæðagreiðsluna IceSave 3, getum kallað það. Það spenna í loftinu núna, menn vita bara ekkert hvernig þetta fer og það getur farið á hvort veginn sem og skoðanakannanir gefa okkur ekkert mjög sterkar vísbendingar. Ólíkt því sem var í fyrri þjóðaratkvæðagreiðslunum IceSave þar sem að maður velti svo sem ekki í vafum hvernig þetta myndi verða. Hingað komin Lee Buchheit sem nú orðinn svona frægur maður á Íslandi og nánast búinn að stíga inn í Íslandssöguna. Hann aðal samningamaðurinn í síðustu samningalótunni. Welcome to Silfur Egils, Lee Buchheit.
Thank you.
Well, you were the chief negotiator and you put a lot of work into this process. How do you feel about this referendum, having a referendum? Do you think it's a good way to decide this?
Frankly, I was surprised that the president made the decision that he did. It struck me at the outset that in a country that is a representative democracy, that has a parliament, that the issues like this would be put in front of the parliament. The people speak through the parliament. But the president made the decision he did, and so it will now go to the electorate as a whole.
Yeah, but this is a complicated subject to tackle in a national referendum.
It is. You see, the Parliament spent a great deal of time studying this and consulted various segments of the society and got views, legal views, economic views, and so forth. They spent a great deal of time studying this and struggling with it. My understanding is that the material they collected is available publicly on a website. Mm-hmm. How many people will consult it, I don't know, but it is an interesting step to have taken.
And now this could sort of tip the either way, really. Where I think it's really hanging in the balance at the moment.
So it seems.
Yes. Well, I would like to take you over ground that you have trodden many times before, sure. And I would like to have you try to explain the agreement you made mm-hmm. to our viewers.
Sure.
Who are going to vote next Saturday, and basically it's a question of what we will have to pay and when we will have to pay it.
Right. The central problem with the negotiation, with this entire affair, is that no one can predict today precisely how much, if any, residual liability there might be for these deposits after the application of the assets of the estate to repay the principal. Current projections are that there will be little or none, but no one can promise you that. As a result, when you sit down and say the task is to negotiate appropriate repayment terms for a liability whose size you do not know, mm-hmm. You can see the challenge of that. The way the negotiating committee approached that was to say that there needs to be within the four corners of the agreement a degree of flexibility, considerable flexibility, so that if this residual liability is larger than anyone now expects, that the repayment terms would automatically stretch out, perhaps as far as 37 years, the year 2046 if need be, so that if the liability is larger, the repayment period becomes more gradual. There is a second protection in the agreement designed to protect the budget in any year in the future. If there is a long stretch out, again, this is not now expected, but were it to happen, one must always anticipate that something unexpected could occur, a natural disaster, an economic recession, which would possibly cause the budgetary receipts of the government in a future year to drop. Well, you see, if you fixed the payments in respect of the IceSave liability in a rigid way, the result could be that in that future year, you would be diverting an unconscionable portion of your budget to service this one liability. So there's a second protection. Again, no one expects it will ever actually be activated. It's there as a safety net or a fail-safe, which says that payments are capped in any one year in the future if budgetary revenues drop. So that was the first challenge of the negotiation. The second one was, what is the appropriate rate of interest on this?
Yes.
And there, as you know, there had been agreements negotiated in 2009 that fixed the interest rate at 5.55%. That interest rate incorporated a margin, a degree of profit for the British and Dutch governments, not out of line with what is being charged to other countries in bilateral loans, indeed quite in line with them. But the position of the Icelandic negotiating team was that this is not a loan of that kind. This was a situation, a distressed situation in which all three parties bore a degree of responsibility. Now, it is true, I believe, that Iceland was principally responsible for supervising Landsbanki and therefore principally responsible for the consequences of the collapse of Landsbanki, but not wholly. I don't think anyone can say that the British and Dutch absolved themselves of any responsibility for supervising this product as it was offered to their citizens. So the negotiating team took the position that we are all sinners to a greater or lesser degree, and therefore we should all bear a portion of the pain that results from this. And therefore the negotiating team said the only fair thing is to try to find an interest rate that approaches the cost of funds for those two countries, in effect what they themselves are having to pay to borrow the money that they have now paid their depositors and are expecting Iceland to repay. And that should become the benchmark. Indeed, that should become the ceiling. Now, obviously, no lender, whether sovereign or commercial, wants to lend at its own cost of funds. But nonetheless, if you depart from that principle, it is tantamount to saying that either Icelandic taxpayers are subsidizing British and Dutch taxpayers, or if you were to drop much below the cost of funds, British and Dutch taxpayers subsidizing Icelandic taxpayers. And that just seemed wrong in these circumstances. It took quite a long time to convince our friends from the Netherlands and Great Britain that that was the right way to view it. In the end, as you know, the interest rate that will apply to this liability for the first 7 years is now expected to be about 2.5% per annum. So it is modest, certainly modest in comparison to what the European countries are offering countries like Greece or Ireland.
But if we take just a look at the best scenario and the worst scenario.
Yeah.
The best scenario would be, in your mind, to pay everything out of the funds of the defunct Landsbanki, probably. And the worst scenario could be something, a collapse of the currency,
yes.
and the bank not being able to live up to its expectations, or the old bank.
That's right.
What I would like to know is what is the margin of error? To what sums could we err in each direction?
The current anticipation, looking at the projections of the Resolution Committee for Landsbanki, who are in charge, and it's important to note that they are in charge of marshalling the assets of the bank and selling them and distributing the proceeds. Their current projections show that those assets should, if not wholly, virtually cover the principal that the British and the Dutch have advanced for these deposits. The current projection I saw yesterday was that the net cost to the Icelandic treasury would be in the range of 32 billion ISK, something like that. Now you ask what can go wrong. Several things possibly could go wrong. Those recoveries from the assets of the estate could be disappointing, below what the Resolution Committee now anticipates, although I should say that thus far they appear to have been very conservative. Second, there could be a significant movement in the exchange rate. Remember that the payments here have got to be made in euros and pounds sterling, so that a movement in the exchange rate could affect it. Third, were there to be a successful challenge of the priority that Parliament had given to depositors in these banks in October of 2008, with the consequence that the depositors were ranking equally with the bondholders and all other creditors, obviously that would significantly affect the outcome. I'm not sure I can give you the outer limit, but it could be chunky, put it that way.
Yeah. So there are these are the three main risks.
Yes.
Yeah. It's about and the third one you mentioned was about the emergency law
That's right.
not holding before a court of law. Well, there was a decision by an Icelandic court on Friday that the wholesale loans they still have a priority. Mm-hmm. Do you think that changes something?
I don't think so. I think these are two different issues. The emergency law of October 2008, because it elevated the depositors in these banks to a priority status, entitled to receive the first distribution of assets from the estate. The effect of that was, of course, involuntarily to subordinate all the other creditors.
Yes.
You see, when a bondholder bought the bond, if they had asked their Icelandic lawyer, where do I rank in the event of an insolvency of one of these banks, they would have been told under Icelandic law as it existed at the time, they ranked equally with the depositors. And so, if they had done a risk analysis, they would have said, all right, the assets of the institution are this, I'm likely to get a recovery of whatever it is. Uh-huh. The moment that the depositors were elevated, that subordinated the others. And so the current projections, which show that the deposit liabilities are likely to be repaid in full from the assets of the estate, there may not be that much that sloshes over to the other creditors. And that's their complaint. That's their... Now, they will presumably raise that complaint in whatever fora they can. But were they to prevail in it, of course, it would affect the economics of this deal. Again, going back, it is against that backdrop that there were uncertainties that this deal incorporates within its four corners this automatic stretch out. It's extraordinary to have a bilateral liability be repaid over 37 years, which is what is possible in this case. But the safeguard is built into the agreement.
But is it true that we have to dish out about 30 million kroner in April if there's a yes?
Yes, well, the one feature of this
30 billion kroner, right?
Yes. One feature of this deal is, I don't know the exact figure, but one feature of this deal is that interest will be paid currently during this period between now and 2016. Yeah. But of course, there was an interest holiday incorporated into the deal. But between the date that ran out and today, interest has been accruing. And so the arrangement is that there would be a catch-up payment that would bring Iceland current on that interest bill.
So interest has been accruing since...
It was, there's a 9-month interest holiday, so put it, I think, at October 2009. Through that date, there was a holiday. After that, it's been accruing.